This is Sky Sports.
This week on NHRA Today, Eddie continues to have a hill of a season, while Warren resumes his winning ways. Chuck E. can afford to buy a vowel after bagging Brainerd, and Schultz creeps closer in the pro bike points battle. From Revell-Monogram Models in Chicago, Illinois, these stories and more on this edition of NHRA Today. If you were to ask those in attendance at NHRA national events how they became interested in drag racing, chances are some would credit a childhood interest in model cars. In fact, some of the legends of drag racing in the 60s and 70s were sponsored by model makers. Those cars spawned an entire generation of fans. And even though today's youth have a wide variety of outlets to develop their racing interests and opportunities, plastic paint and glue can convert scaled-down dreams into full-size enthusiasm. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of NHRA Today. I'm Steve Evans. First, let's deal with the real thing. Here in the parking lot at Revell-Monogram, we find Ed the Ace McCullough's McDonald's Top Fuel Dragster and the funny car driven by Cruz Pedregon. But in the next half hour, we're going to show you how the people in there take these machines and run them through their incredible shrinking process to perfectly replicate them in 1/25th and 1/24 scale. Plus, we'll have results of the Champion Auto Stores Nationals held last weekend in Brainerd, Minnesota. But first, let's find out what, besides this gorgeous Chicagoland weather, is hot. It was a crash-em-bash-em weekend in Brainerd, where top fuel driver Jack Ostrander suffered another serious accident. He blew a tire, threw off sparks, and caromed off the guardrail before coming to a rest in a cloud of dust.
As soon as I hit the guardrail, I didn't have any control because it knocked the steering out of the car.
Considering what that car looks like, Jack's a bit philosophical.
Maybe this is good luck. I'm still around.
Even in pro stock, there was action, as Mark Osborne, driving David Nickens' Oldsmobile, made a dive for the rail after two troublesome runs.
And in the third pass, come out here, ran 730 and hit the wall at the end, and it literally did about, I don't know, $15,000, $20,000 worth of damage to the race car.
Hopefully, we can get the car competitive and come back and be a factor the rest of the year.
A more pleasant surprise was found in the snake pits, where legendary crew chief Leonard Hughes traded funny cars for top fuel in joining the Don Prudhomme team.
I've known Don for 30 years. We're racing, and I'm glad to be here.
Leonard's working for us now, and if Roland gets his deal back on focus, we'll share Leonard.
And that's what's hot. Right now, we want all of you to meet Ed Sexton, who is the manager of product development here at Revell-Monogram. And Ed, I think we can assume you got to take some pictures of the real thing. That's the first step.
That's right. We go to many different locations, whether it be the drag strip, Detroit, wherever, to get information on our model kits. We go to our location where the car is and take many, many rolls of films of all the different parts from all the different angles. Then once we have that information, we come back here to Revell-Monogram and translate that information into drawings of each component part in the model kit.
Before we show you the next step, did you know Revell makes pro stock models? Yep, Jerry Ekman and Ricky Smith. Speaking of pro stock, here's Dave McClellan's report from Brainerd on 2 and 4 wheels.
The rainy weather that turned eliminations at the Champion Auto Stores Nationals into a 2-day affair did not dampen the enthusiasm of the fans or racers. The extra day meant a change of plans for some, but for pro stock driver Gary Brown, change is all part of the game, like his hiring of former driver Morris Johnson Jr. as crew chief.
We brought Morris Johnson on as crew chief starting at Denver. We got the same parts and pieces that we've had for 2 years, and he just basically turned it all around.
This is the most fun I've had racing in years since I was driving.
In the first round, Brown met the Miola Racing Cutlass of Steve Schmidt in a battle of number 8 and 9 qualifiers. Schmidt in the near lane had the better reaction time, and that was enough to end Gary's day, despite his quicker elapsed time. Schmidt was then beaten in round 2 by Scott Jeffreyon's Mopar Parts Daytona, setting up a Final Four battle between the Dodge and Larry Morgan's Super Clean Cutlass. The two drivers cut identical lights, but Morgan in the near lane steadily poured on the power to win by inches and secure a spot in the final against Warren Johnson. In that race, Morgan left the beams first and led at half-track. But WJ's GM Performance Parts Cutlass came around at the top end, giving Warren his 7th win of the season.
Well, it's a lot closer than I'd like to see him, but fortunately we were on the winning side of that one.
Warren's victory increases his lead in the Winston Points race ahead of Jeffrey Hahn, son Kurt, Larry Morgan, and Bob Glidden. The Pro Stock Bike Final once again came down to championship contenders John Myers and David Schultz. And once again, a red light decided the matter as Myers' wax shop Star Racing Suzuki fouled, sending the Sunoco Dynastar rider to the winner's circle.
John brings out the best in me, and when you try to go for your very best, there's a fine line there. You might step over the edge.
Dave's win chips away at Myers' lead in the Winston Points standings, with John Smith, Ron Ayers, and Byron Hines completing the top 5.
Ed Sexton has rejoined us. And Ed, this is where those drawings come next.
That's right. We bring the drawings in here to start creating the parts that'll make up the model kit. We carve each individual part out of wood, and it takes us approximately 16 weeks to do this. We carve them out of a material called basswood because it remains very stable through the whole course. This work is done by old world craftsmen that we have here at the shop, and we conduct some of our own on-the-job training to bring up young people in doing this type of work.
Almost a lost art. Well, last weekend in Brainerd, 16 top fuel qualifiers were trying to carve out a championship. Here's Dave's report.
The Champion Auto Stores Nationals marked Scott Colitta's 6th #1 qualifying position of the season. But as the team prepared for eliminations, Scott couldn't help but wonder why they remained winless.
We really can't explain it. If we could explain it, maybe we wouldn't do it. But I'm just, a lot of it's bad luck. I mean, a couple weeks ago, we broke an exhaust rocker arm adjuster. We've been throwing belts off it, been dropping cylinders.
Despite those problems, crew chief Dick LaHaye considers the American International Airways team a dark horse contender for the Winston Crown.
I keep figuring the numbers and stuff like that on the points, and it don't appear as though that we're out of it, but there's a lot of ground to make up, and we're up to the task.
After disposing of Shelly Anderson's Jolly Rancher entry in round 1, Scott met up with Seattle winner Tommy Johnson's Mopar Express Lube machine. But Scott's hopes for his first Top Fuel national win disappeared in a flash of the red light, which hurt even more when Johnson smoked the tires at the launch. TJ then moved past Rance McDaniel and into the finals, where he would meet the winner of the race between Eddie Hill and Corey McLenathan. Corey seized a huge lead in the near lane, but then lit up the tires, letting Hill's Pennzoil Nuclear Banana streak past to claim a lucky victory. In the championship round, the cars were even until Johnson lost grip at the 60-foot mark, and Eddie Hill's record-tying 6th win of the season moved him one step closer to his championship dream.
It's sure making that championship that we wanted all our lives look a little more possible now, and although that's not a commanding lead, it sure feels good at this point. I'd rather be that far ahead than that far behind at this part of the season.
Eddie's win widens his lead over Kenny Bernstein, Scott Coletta, and Mike Dunn, while Tommy Johnson leaps up from 8th to the number 5 spot.
Time for the next step in creating a model kit. Ed?
Right. We start with those wood pieces that you saw earlier. They're in 1/10 scale, and we make resin casts of them.
Right.
Then we take parts from those resin casts and test fit them together so that they all fit properly.
Mm-hmm.
Then we go back to the resin casts and pantograph them in the steel down to 1/25 scale.
You know, a model car doesn't have to worry about trying to fire a fuel charge. Real dragsters do. And last weekend in Brainerd, the finalists, Eddie Hill and Tommy Johnson Jr., they carried some serious firepower, as Frank Hawley tells us in his Fast Fact.
An internal combustion engine needs 3 things to operate. It needs air, fuel, and ignition. The air, of course, is all around us, and it's free. The fuel goes in the fuel tank, and unfortunately, it's not free. We have to buy it. And the ignition comes from a spark plug like this one. But what's been the area of constant development over the years isn't the spark plug, but the power to the spark plug, and that's a magneto. This is the latest in a long line of developments in magnetos. They're huge compared to the old units. They have larger windings and double capacitors. They make twice the amperage that the old units do. There's only about 10 of these magnetos out there. And in addition to making twice the amperage, they also cost more than twice as much. So you can bet that the crew chiefs will be paying very careful attention to see if their performance of their car increases with these units aboard.
The cast we showed you earlier, well, it goes outside of Revell-Monogram to a mold-making center that returns the actual mold made out of the hardest steel obtainable. There's a left and a right or a top and a bottom. And have a look. They mold a lot of different parts at the same time. There's a wheel and little bitty headers here and a little bitty fuel injector, and there's the funny car cage. In fact, there is the funny car chassis. Now, these molds look fairly simple. Well, they're extremely complicated. Understand, molten plastic comes in here and has to be cooled in a matter of seconds for efficiency in manufacturing. So there are all kinds of water jackets throughout these molds to make that happen. Two of the busiest guys in racing last weekend were top fuel stars Ed "The Ace" McCullough and Eddie Hill, who combined racing at Brainerd with the final round of the FastMasters at Indianapolis Raceway Park. McCullough had stunned everyone by winning the first round of the series for racing legends over 50 years of age. And in round 3, a last corner spin by two rivals helped propel Hill into the finals. After qualifying at Brainerd on Saturday, both drivers were off to Indy with the help of another legend, Mr. 301, Kenny Bernstein.
You know, no one expected us to go out and do well, and when we did go out and do well, I think it was more of a surprise.
I hope we do well to kind of uphold drag racing's honor, so to speak, but we're against some awfully heavy hitters out there that know how to do that.
Among those notable names were Unser, Jones, Rutherford, Pearson, and as the green flag fell for the first heat, drag racing fans back in Brainerd cheered on their heroes via satellite. But on the third lap, McCullough tangled with David Pearson and missed the chicane, ending his chance for the $100,000 first prize.
Ended up in the back, and that's where I stayed, and then those guys locked it up in front of me, and it was just downhill from there.
In the second heat, Eddie started 5th and moved up one spot when Johnny Rutherford spun while going for the final transfer spot. But the Thrill also missed the final, which was eventually won by Bobby Unser.
Between now and then, if I do get invited back on to practice a little.
Welcome back, everyone, to Revell-Monogram. And Ed, it's time to make some parts.
Right. We take the mold and we load it into the machine here, and then the plastic is fed into the machine by overhead lines in a pellet form. At the machine, it's melted and flowed into the cavities of the mold. Then, after it solidifies, the mold opens up, the mold operator takes those parts, cuts them up, bags them, and then that bagged assembly is put into the kit.
It's faster than I thought it would be.
Yep, we do about 130 parts per hour.
Amazing. And a lot of those parts are little bitty funny car bodies. Well, the machines they were modeled after were in action in Brainerd last weekend. Here is Dave's final report.
The Champion Auto Stores Nationals are held in the land of 10,000 lakes, but it is also the land of thousands more drag racing fans, many of whom were cheering on local hero and funny car campaigner Bruce Nielsen.
At times it's difficult because you're trying to do your best because everybody's watching you, so it's a little easier to race away from home at times.
Nielsen also builds funny cars, making some of his competitors customers.
So I built Tom Hoover's 1990 car, which he ran for about a year and a half. When you have a good run, there's nothing better than driving a fast car, but I like building them.
Come eliminations, Nielsen brought his Daytona to the line for a first-round matchup with number 6 qualifier Gary Dencham. But Bruce was gone long before the green light, giving Gary in the near lane the automatic win.
Gary's a good lever, and I just squeeze the light trying to get a good hole shot on him.
Dencham was then beaten by the Castrol Cutlass of number 2 qualifier John Force, who then met up in a final 4 battle of oil companies with Chuck Etchel's Kendall Daytona. At the green, Force moved first and seemed headed to the final until he overpowered the racetrack and slowed. Etchel's win moved him into the finals, where his opponent was the McDonald's Oldsmobile of Cruz Pedregon. And as the cars left the line, Chuck's hole shot advantage proved to be the difference as he scored his first win of the season despite Cruz's quicker elapsed time.
It's the way we want to win. You want to beat the best to do it, and that's what you're really talking about with Cruz and John.
Etchel's win propels him past Al Hoffman into 3rd in the Winston point standings behind John Force and Cruz Pedregon, while Tom Hoover rounds out the top 5.
Few things are more maddening than buying any kind of a kit and finding that a part is missing or defective. Well, here they do everything they can to prevent that from happening. This is called the Quality Control Board, and every part here is known to be absolutely perfect. Now, when this job goes on the line, the first few pieces out of the mold are compared back to the quality control board, and they better be exactly the same, or measures are taken to correct it. The Make-A-Wish Foundation helped buy a junior dragster for 11-year-old Steve Michaels to race at Brainerd to take Steve's mind off his immune disorder. But when the car flunked NHRA's technical inspection, the John Force crew came to the rescue.
Throttle stop needed a block behind it, and so they had to get some aluminum sheet metal, so Coyle and Butterfield got in there and they put something together, so evidently it was okay because he was racing.
It's easy to see why Steve spells hero, F-O-R-C-E.
I like his attitude about racing, and he's a really nice guy, and he likes to do stuff for kids.
And joining us right now is the CEO of Revell-Monogram, Tim Colley. And Tim, where is modeling today, and where do you think it'll go in the future?
Well, model building's been benefiting from the resurgence in traditional toys and hobbies overall, and sure enough, we've had 3 straight years of great growth in the category. As we move ahead, we're going to marry model building with software video game playing and a great new product called European Racers that lets you build the car, then climb in behind the wheel of it in a 3-dimensional racing game.
I can't wait. Right now, let's join my one-off model colleague, Bob Fry, for the Brainerd Sportsman Report.
When you think about Stock Eliminator this year, you think about the Emmons family and the great job that Speedy's doing. He might win the Winston Championship. Then, of course, out west, you got Cal and Marianne Method. Marianne's doing a great job, and she just might win the Winston Championship. But if you come to BIR and you want to win in Stock Eliminator at the Champion Auto Store Nationals, you better get in line. You might say this family comes from a long line of racers. There's Mom and Dad, who both race, and they passed the love of the sport down to their sons, Lance, Jason, and Ben. Plus, there's daughter Stephanie, who just started bracket racing. That's a lot of cars for one family, but there are 2 lines of opinions about car makes.
It's a 50-50 deal. My daughter and my 2 boys like Mustangs, and my wife and my 1 boy like GM. We got to be fair.
There is one thing that everybody in this family agrees on, and that's who is the best driver.
Jason.
Jason.
Seems to be a consensus opinion here, huh?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question on that fact, and I know it's definitely not me.
Oh, that's not a fair question at all. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, but I mean, Jason has done the best.
Jason has had a lot of success at Brainerd. He won the Winston Drag Racing Series event earlier this season, and last year at this event, he made a beeline to the finish line to win a race he will never forget.
I had to race Glenn Iverson, and I'd never raced him before, and I guess I didn't think about that so much, but I was so nervous. My left leg was shaking, like it was moving about a ½ an inch back and forth, and I tried to hold it with my hand, but I still couldn't stop it.
This year, the Line family sort of fell out of line in the first round, all except Jason. He kept the family name and his 71 Buick in contention until the quarterfinals. But this race belonged to another Buick, driven by Lynn Smith. Lynn beat the red-lighting John Rittmeyer in the near lane to pick up his first win at Brainerd.
Coming to this race for 12 years and come real close a couple times, and man, I just keep hitting on it, and I'll get this one, and I finally did today.
Now, here are the rest of the winners from the Champion Auto Stores Nationals. For NHRA Today, I'm Bob Fry.
Is it real, or is it Revell? Well, the finished models are so close, if we had some Munchkin McCullochs and Pedregons, we could probably go for it. And go is what we have to do. But we'll be back next week. We'll come to you from Indianapolis with a preview of the granddaddy of them all, the U.S. Nationals. We'll also have a profile on Lee Beard, not coincidentally the crew chief for Ed McCullough's Top Fuel Dragster. And you'll meet the moving force behind Freddie Neely's record-holding forever young funny car, Dick Brown. For all of us here at NHRA Today, thanks for watching.
NHRA Today is a presentation of Diamond P Sports.